What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Michael Ruiz, and in this video, it's a conversation between Tristan Scott and my business partner, Jordan Urbs, as well as me, and we get into a number of topics, from natural ways to heal yourself, to how blue light affects our sleep, to the negative impact that technology has on our body, as well as how fiat has corrupted our food and healthcare system. It was a great conversation. We're over here in El Salvador. It's a beautiful backdrop, and I learned a lot, and I think you guys are too. So with that said, let's get right into the conversation. I hope you guys enjoy. Peace. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, your background, how you got to this point where you found interest in alternative health methods?
Yeah, so I grew up kind of like probably healthier than most because my mom is an immigrant from Austria. So I grew up eating, home cooked meals, going outside, hiking, camping. These are all regular, aspects of my childhood growing up. So I'm so thankful for that. But then, teenager, went to college, all that went out the window and started eating like crap, having terrible lifestyle habits, all the above. And then I was a college athlete. Played soccer, was an engineering student, and I basically had one too many concussions, and as a result of that, lost control of my health, and I was dealing with post-concussive syndrome for over 15 months, severely, where had headaches every single day, extreme chronic fatigue, irritability, all the above. And 4 months into that, I went to a neurologist in the centralized healthcare system. Was really excited. It took me so long to get an appointment. I didn't really understand what was going on. Invisible injuries are a big mental challenge. And he basically said, yeah, you have post-concussive syndrome. I was like, great, what can I do? He said, oh, just take it easy and get back into your normal routine. So it was devastating for me. And, I was pretty depressed after that for a couple months. But then I started to get some motivation back, actually by reconnecting with nature, going on a couple camping trips, feeling better when I was doing that. And then I was like, this can't be it. This is not my new normal. I'm 22. I have my whole life ahead of me. So I decided to do some research. I was like, what's available to me so I can actually maybe even get 10%, 20% better? Because even that incremental improvement would be a vast difference in the quality of life. And then I began consuming information like crazy, books, podcasts, YouTube videos, realized there's this whole community of people who went through self-healing journeys, and there's all this information available to heal and to try things. So that's what I did in 2019. That's what I did in 12 to 18 months after my brain injury, and I started to feel a lot better. So focusing on sleep, focusing on diet, focusing on stress reduction, getting back outside, all these types of things. And I got so much better. I was able to exercise again. I was able to do consistent work again, and I was hooked. I was like, this is incredible. I want to tell my story. So I made an Instagram page. I started thinking about how I could contribute. Simultaneously, was learning a lot about crypto, and then only Bitcoin after 2020. And then, yeah, COVID happened. And it was like, that was a big moment for a lot of people. And for me, it just furthered my position in what are the main issues plaguing our society. And it's all coming back to centralization and fiat money.
I got a couple questions here from that. So number one, the distinction between what the medical establishment was telling you, for instance, and what you learned from your own healing journey. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. They didn't tell me much. I mean, it took 3 months to get an appointment. I got an EEG, it was normal, and then they were like, sounds like you're probably concussed, or you were concussed, and you're just having residual symptoms from that. There's no protocol standard for concussions for recovery. It's an invisible injury, so no image can tell you you're concussed. And, it's really like a psychology type of injury after you get it. And it's crazy because I had a concussion in high school, and I had a more progressive doctor who was like, try these vitamins and do some physical exercise or physical therapy in terms of balance and eye tracking. But yeah, in that moment, I got absolutely no help. And then through my own research, I met with some functional neurologists who are mostly chiropractors. I did some vestibular, ocular therapy. But it really was the lifestyle habits that implemented that I implemented that had the biggest impact on my recovery and gave me the momentum to get a positive feedback loop going instead of being in this negative one for such a long period of time.
And are there like specific lifestyle changes that had the greatest impact? So obviously you mentioned like sleep and diet and so forth. Anything specific in addition to that?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it was really combating symptoms. So I'm not a big supplements guy, but now, because I've built back that foundation of health, so I don't need them. But I tried some more natural supplements, like CBD was really helpful, fish oil, which now I know why, because it's extremely high in DHA, which is, you know, one of the most important nutrients in our body, because it can turn sunlight into DC electricity in our brain and in our eyes, which is a rabbit hole we don't need to go down, but it's tying back to that electromagnetic aspect of our biology. And the other things were just getting on a consistent sleep schedule, you know, spending more time in nature outside was a big one. I didn't know all the benefits of sunlight back then or things like grounding. But I knew that it was having a positive impact. It was just that anecdotal feel, and then eating clean foods. So I actually went keto for a while, and it's mostly just eating, you know, animal foods, and that had a tremendous impact. I definitely think anyone dealing with a brain injury can have a substantial gain in their recovery by going low carb and high fat. So that was helpful. And then I actually bought, you know, blue light blocking glasses was one of the first things I bought in 2019. But they weren't the best pair, but they helped. And again, it was before I knew all of these things about light that I do now. It was just like screens hurt my eyes. When I stare at screens, my brain hurts, my symptoms get worse. This is helping me. There must be something here.
You know, that reminds me of in high school. When I was in high school, I suffered my first migraine, and I remember that moment, and it was the lights that I was under, the fluorescent lights. They started becoming painful, and from that, the migraine just transpired and got worse and worse and worse. Is that a symptom or a condition that kind of these fluorescent lights cause?
Absolutely. And it may not be the root cause or the reason why it popped up in the first place, but if you're sensitive, it's going to exacerbate the issue for sure.
That's what it felt like. Like it made everything worse. And it was just like I just had to lock myself in a dark room and just let that, you know, transpire.
And that's the cool thing, I guess, about having somewhat of a brain injury is like I became very sensitive to these types of environmental inputs, you can call them, how I like to think about it. And same thing with just being on your technology, EMFs in general. And that's because they're completely unnatural, you know, ways of interacting with our body. They're highly pulsed, so they're flickering. You know, light flicker is terrible for our eyes, terrible for our brain, and they're in a spectrum of light that is also completely alien. They're very rich in the blue spectrum and very, you know, absent in the more healing, warm spectrum, which is the red and infrared of light. So if you want to just think about it from a high level, we want to be copying nature as best we can in all facets of our life, because nature is what our biology is tuned to work with. We've been, as humans on this planet, for maybe, you know, 500,000 years, a million years, whatever the latest, you know, number is. But even before that, you know, all biology is hundreds of millions of years old, and it's evolved directly in contact with the natural environment that's here on Earth. So when we create alien frequencies in the form of lights, LEDs, fluorescence, you know, radio frequencies, they all have a negative impact on our health, because no biology is tuned to work with this aspect or this type of frequency in the electromagnetic spectrum. So all we really should be doing is thinking about how can we better copy nature. And nature is the first and only true fully decentralized system that exists.
So going back to when you got into this journey and you went online doing research, you found names and faces of people talking about this stuff. I imagine, well, for myself, I don't imagine it was real. There are some, I don't want to say con artists, but people out there making stuff up. It seems like it could be right. You're trying to figure out your problems. You're trying to figure this out. They might be trying to sell something, whatever it is. How would you even give advice to someone out there? Like, okay, if you know you've got something going on, you need to start doing research. How do you really tell? Do we have an intuition based on what you're saying about our own biology, about natural frequencies, natural rhythms? Can we just tell if someone is for real with what they're saying? How do we distinguish the woo-woo and the bullshit and what's real?
It's a great point, because when you get into this, realm of electromagnetism, and it's something we can't conceptualize. Like, why do people love food and diet? It's because we can see it, we can feel it, it tastes good. We eat it 2-3 times. I mean, some people 20 times a day, but it's tangible. So when you're talking about, electromagnetism, only the visible rainbow is something that we can see. That's like 1% of the entire spectrum of, photons of electromagnetism. The rest is invisible. So it's hard to grasp. It's hard to conceptualize. However, just think logically is what I always do. In any situation, I take a step back and I'm like, all right, well, like, how does this fit into the context of human history, of what existed before, the Industrial Revolution, what existed before the technology revolution in the last 25 to 35 years, and how much does this cost? Is this something that is accessible to everyone, or is it only accessible to people who have money and are buying into the marketing scheme that's being sold to you? And the conclusion is really simple, right? Like, if it actually has a positive impact on your health, it should be accessible to everyone, and nature is accessible. Getting outside, getting sunlight, it costs $0 to watch the sunrise every day. It costs $0 to go outside and get melanin from the UV light on your skin. Yeah, maybe it costs a lot of money to move to a different place in the world or buy a plane ticket to the Caribbean for Christmas, but you can embrace your local environment with $0 of input wherever you live in the world. And that's something that's 100% accessible and passes the sniff test to me. Same thing with, like food. Eating locally, eating real food. If you cook your own food, yeah, maybe people are like, well, healthy food costs some money. What costs a lot of money? You're like, mac and cheese, organic stuff that's like super fancy and has all these nice labels and non-GMO, everything. It's like, okay, but like going to your local farmers market, buying local produce, and then buying meat in bulk from a local rancher, which is what I do. Actually not that expensive. And if you cook your own meals, let's compare that to like DoorDash or like just going out to eat, you're saving money. So that's where I think, does it make sense? Is it logical? Who can have access to this? And then simultaneously, for all the products that exist out there, supplements, gadgets, biohacking devices, I think that 95% of them you should probably be extremely skeptical about, right? Like, why do you need this thing? Is this because you want a short-term solution? Do you have a severe health issue that needs, kind of like a boost to get you over the hump? That's why you need to buy maybe a $50, $100 supplement? Then that's okay. But if you're relying on that long-term, you're not addressing the root cause issues, which is always rooted in lifestyle habits. But it's the hardest to overcome. And that's where it all comes back to time preference.
This is for me always related back to sovereignty and sovereign being. Is like, how much can I take care of on my own? Because fiat farming is, no, you need to buy this, you need to buy this, you need to buy this. Only we can take care of you. You can't do it yourself. You can't change your lifestyle, become disciplined, start learning, and see what works for you. And so, yeah, when it comes to cooking, when it comes to just making these decisions, that to me is part of this bigger overall movement going on here.
Exactly. And that's why you could argue that the supplement industry is just as bad, if not worse, than the pharmaceutical industry. Ooh. And then the herbalists, the functional medicine practitioners that are telling you need to take 35 herbs just to be like healthy. This is not the solution either. Those are better probably because they exist in nature. Yeah, but if you're extracting them to that degree, and it's really on that fringe of whether it is natural. But if you're spending all this money and taking all these supplements, is that health? To me, it's not. And to me, it's kind of being fiat farmed in another way. There's so much misinformation, and then that's the standard, right? Like, you need to take all these things, you need to spend, you know, I've seen videos where it's like, I've spent $50,000 in the last year on my health to get better, and it's like, holy shit, that's insane. And, you know, I get it. In the beginning, people are trying everything, they're going to like 10 different specialists, and that's part of the centralized system, but like, you don't have to do that. You could simply, you know, maybe spend more of your money on moving to a place that's more conducive to healing, like here in El Salvador or at a beach somewhere. It has a lot of sun, easy access to nature, low population density, it's quiet, there's low, you know, activity going on, so you can actually heal, you can start to sleep better. But in terms of the gadgets, you know, what's his name? Brian Johnson is spending like millions of dollars to live forever. That's, you know, the antithesis of what health really is.
Yeah, it's almost like a synthetic existence, right? Where you have to rely on external, you know, supplements just to be healthy and keep yourself alive.
And it's cool, he's getting a lot of data for the rest of us, but, you know, that's unrealistic, and it's not health, you know, that is biohacking, and I almost separate the two completely. And I just think that health needs to be, and it is, accessible to everyone. And really, a lot of people think of like income levels. Well, now the income levels are actually working in the opposite favor of those who are wealthy, because people who are wealthy are working inside under, you know, in a big nice office building. They have, you know, a fancy desk, whereas, you know, the laborers, the people who are working their ass off physically are outside doing construction, doing, you know, hard work. I mean, they're actually, some of them are making a good amount of money, but I'm just saying the archetype there. And because of that, they're probably in better health as a result of it, because they're actually seeing the light of the day and getting outside, as opposed to working under fluorescence and staring at a screen for 12 hours straight every day.
So I want to kind of explore this a little bit more about the confusion and also the trade-offs and the incentives that have all been created in our modern world, and kind of try to pinpoint where the origin of all that comes from. You know, it's, to me, when I look at everything, I see this, like you said, stemming from 1971 and the creation of fiat money and inflation, and all of us having to just run the rat race in order to keep up, right, as our value gets depleted from us. And so it's like we almost have to outsource our decision-making abilities to experts and so forth. And so I'm just wondering if you could tap into that a little bit more and kind of help me flesh that out.
Yeah, I mean, since 1971, right, the money supply has grown like 6 to 8% average per year. So that's the real inflation rate, not 2%. And in order to keep up with that, every company, every, you know, organization needs to be posting at least 6 to 8% annual gains. Now, you can't get that from just natural growth unless you're like, you know, a unicorn, and even then, that'll die off eventually. So shareholders, investors, they're trying to protect their money. So businesses, what do? They flocked overseas. We became a global manufacturing economy because they realized that even though there's such a large expense to ship things around the world, if they pay someone in China or Taiwan to do their labor at $1 an hour instead of someone in the US at $10 an hour, they're saving 10x cost, and the shipping and all that in terms of logistical expenses is worth it. And that's how they can keep up with this 6 to 8% growth of the money supply. And what comes next? Quality of goods. So they, you know, you can only make more money by having, you know, lower cost and selling more. So lower quality of goods brings your costs down, and then marketing, you can use that increased profit to spend it on marketing. So now you see it pervasively in the food system, right? All these fake foods, it's scalable. You can make, you know, plant-based burgers in a manufacturing, you know, warehouse. Really, you can crank them out. Beef, regeneratively raised beef, or just any kind of beef, it takes 2 years, and you have to wait for the animal, and you have to graze it on a specific piece of land. Like, there's a lot of proof of work that goes into that system. You can't just dial it up like that. Whereas with like all the fake food items that exist, they can on almost, you know, a moment's notice in relative comparison. And you see the marketing, you know, Oatly spends $100 million on marketing, and nobody's buying this still, thank God, and Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat, all this type of stuff as well. And then talk about healthcare, right? The pharmaceutical industry is one of the largest economies in the United States. They're able to advertise to the public. They're able to be tens of billions of dollars in terms of market cap in our stock market. Pfizer, Moderna, you know, GlaxoSmithKline, all these companies, they are incentivized to make more money. So how did they make more money? Is they sell more products. And how do they sell more products? Well, they're pharmaceutical companies, so their customers are sick people. So the economy is set up to keep people sick, so they end up spending more. Everyone's like, we have this giant healthcare burden. That's like by design. That is the economy right there. That is part of the fiat economy that's propping it up. And then the other large one is the tech industry, right? Like tech is at least $5 trillion industry, and we're being completely fiat farmed. There's no real innovation happening. The new iPhone that's coming out every 2 years has slightly better camera, slightly better processing speed. There's no real innovation. Same with your car, same with your computer, your laptop. And they market it to the fact that you need to be continuously buying these things. And it just so turns out that this technology is also addicting you, so you use it more, because Google and Facebook, they're actually making money off your attention rather than the hardware. So they need more screen time in order to keep their business model growing and keeping up with the growth of the money supply. And then we land here in 2024 when we have, you know, children's mental health plummeting, suicide rates skyrocketing, chronic disease proliferating earlier and earlier ages. Add in, you know, the whole COVID jab schedule, pharmaceutical companies making billions off that, and now we're seeing, you know, all these crazy health events happen in young people, and you wonder why. And we have, you know, increased polarity and social, you know, issues at the highest level, and this is all part of the equation. It's all part of the toxic soup environment we live in that's a result of a crippling monetary system.
So you mentioned children's health is plummeting. I'm a father, so I like to explore that. I also like to recognize that even in the quest towards sovereignty, you can't always have it all. You can't always do it all. You got to make some sacrifices. So what is this, and how can it potentially combat fiat farming?
Yeah, so just to set the scene there a little bit, I said we live in a modern toxic soup world. It talked about the importance of light and, you know, electromagnetism in our environment, and in general, just like mitigating toxins. You guys mentioned seed oils and plastics earlier. These are all great examples. To me, the biggest environmental toxin by far in our environment is our devices that we use, our phones, our laptops. Every year that goes by, I think we're spending an ever-increasing amount. I mean, personally, I know this is true. Like, I look back 5 years, I'm like, holy shit, I'm probably spending double the amount of screen time. And that's accelerating. And then you mentioned children. Children, that's proliferating through a roof. I think the average child now gets a smartphone at age like 8 or 9, and they're getting up to like 13 hours of screen time per day. And their biology is far more susceptible to harmful effects from non-native electromagnetic inputs. And why is that? Because they're smaller. So imagine holding a phone where you're looking at it. It's probably the distance of, you know, your forearm, maybe times 80%, because your elbow's bent. A child is, you know, maybe 50 to 60% the size of you, depending on where. So they're,
and they hold it closer anyway.
And then they hold it way closer. So distance is an extremely important thing to understand about electromagnetism. From light and also light and EMFs from like radio frequencies, it's all the same thing. It's just different type of frequency. And distance, the closer you are, the intensity of that field increases by a square factor. So distance can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So for children, if they're holding it 2 times closer, 4 times stronger.
Oh my God.
If you're able to use your phone, that's why you should never hold your phone next to your head, because if you hold it next to your head, you're basically 0 distance to your skull, which is, you know, your brain. And if you hold it out here on speaker and use headphones, that's probably like a 90 to 99% reduction in the field. And our children, right? We're giving these to our kids at earlier and earlier ages. Like you said, it's nice. It can be extremely stressful to be a parent. I understand that. I've seen it with my sister and my nephew, but they're doing a tremendous job. But still, it's an extremely stressful process. So I get that, you know, the devices can be helpful. However, we don't need to have devices that are so toxic. And why are they so toxic? Because the light they emit, because the EMFs they have, and because that's addicting by nature. That's a very beautiful bird. And because they're confining us inside. Children are meant to be playing outside. They're not meant to be blasted with blue light that's ruining their circadian rhythm or their body clock, that's ruining their dopamine, and it's kind of programming them to be addicted. And you can tell that they're way more sensitive to it. Just Google like a 2-year-old having an iPad taken away, and they freak out.
So is it the blue light itself? Because I've always thought more of like a psychological point of view. Is like these apps are manipulative, you know, they're addicting, the actual activities. But is the blue light probably like the bigger culprit here of all of these?
It's one of the, I mean, think about it. Like we talk about social media being like really addictive, and I mean, it's definitely rewiring your, you know, reward system for your neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. But is your 2-year-old on Twitter like getting likes and stuff? No, they're not. They're probably just watching some video or something. But even that is drawing them in so much. It's pulling them in like, wow, this looks incredible. Like it's lighting their brain up. And that is something that's really problematic. And because of their developing biology, they're far more susceptible to that. So that's what I realized. I realized, wow, you know, you can be a more sovereign individual. You can buy local food. You could maybe buy local clothing. You can't buy local startup-made technology. You can't buy a car made in the US that's, you know, a small company. It doesn't exist. So to me, I saw this huge gap in terms of technology devices that we use every day. And I podcasted with my now founder, CEO, Anjan Kata, in January. And he started a company called the Daylight Computer. And really the mission is to create healthier and more sovereign computers with innovative technology. And that's now, you know, a full-time position that I have, trying to proliferate this mission and message we have. And I don't think there is a more important company in the world today to succeed for our children.
Wow. So when you say sovereign computer, what are you specifically referencing there as far as the term sovereignty?
What does sovereignty mean? That's a great question. And, you know, if you look up the definition, it'll something about like ruling or being ruled will come up. So you need to apply like self-sovereign or the sovereign individual or individual sovereignty. And that means that you are in control. Like you are the ruler of your own life. And you are not outsourcing that to someone else. There's not a king, there's not a politician who's telling you what to do, who's telling you what you should be doing, or what is the best decision to make for your life. So you are in the driver's seat. And to me, that speaks to everything I stand for, because when I had my brain injury, I was taken out of the driver's seat. I was so limited. I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. And then I put myself back into that through proof of work, and now I'm trying to proliferate that message. And there's Bitcoiners who understand that, but there's more than just Bitcoin. And then there's health folks who have regained their health through a more individualized approach by doing proof of work, but then they are missing the financial monetary side of things. It's a well-rounded, it's a holistic lifestyle to live, to be self-sovereign. And from a technology perspective, what does that look like? It looks like thinking about the end consumer at the first level. We are designing this technology to be able to be used and have a positive relationship with it. So if you make a piece of technology that is detrimental for someone's health, you are robbing their individual sovereignty. If you are making a piece of technology that is farming the data of the end user and then addicting them to spend more and more time on it because that's part of your business model, that's robbing their individual sovereignty. So what we're trying to address at Daily Computer is all aspects of that, starting mostly from the health perspective at first. We've really have innovative hardware technology with the screen, and then long-term addressing it from the software side of things as well.
First of all, that's fantastic. And what a mission to go after, right? It's something that I definitely like commend and support. So, but what I'm hearing you say as far as the technology and modern technology from like, you know, the Apple phone into all the devices that are popular right now is that there are some type of addictive frequencies or substances within them that rob the person of their agency in order to make decisions for their lives because they're addicted to this device?
To some degree, and whether that's intentionally done or it's a byproduct of just technological evolution, you could debate until the cows come home, but it doesn't matter. You know, there's now sufficient evidence that says blue light at nighttime is really bad for our circadian rhythm, which is a predisposed high risk to all chronic diseases. You know, it's not a debate that blue light in excess at any time is causing some oxidative stress within the body. And it's also clearly altering the mental health of our society. You know, we are drawn in, and that's a combination for me of the light environment and then also the psychological design of the applications being used and the, you know, virality of the content, the short form, the hooks. They're drawing you in to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So it's not just the blue light, it's everything, but that is a major factor of it. And, you know, there's other things such as the flicker, such as, you know, the EMFs as well, such as, like I mentioned, it's confining you indoors. So when you have this really low baseline of dopamine, basically because you live indoors, you never get sun, you eat garbage food, you go to bed late, you have no foundation of health, you have no foundation of health sovereignty, you are going to be so susceptible to being fiat farmed and then doom scrolling for hours and thinking you need to buy things to fulfill your life because you have no true purpose or fulfillment from the real world because you never actually set foot in it. And now, what are they trying to sell you? Augmented reality. Apple Vision Pro, turn on this headset so that you can actually experience what it's like to do cool things in the real world when they're just making another artificial reality for you. So that's why our mission is to have technology that is both addressing it directly and indirectly. Technology that is easily used outside, like go outside, embrace it, and then also is less harmful, less aggressively pursuing, you know, negative aspects of your biology.
Last question before all our cameras are overheated. How conscious do you think these tech companies are of, for example, the blue light stuff?
I think they are extremely ignorant. How much do they think about it? I really don't know. I think they have a lot of health washing in their marketing, like, you know, their night mode and things like that. I think they have to know that blue light keeps you up at night, and that if you're up at night, you're going to be scrolling more and more. So I think they unintentionally or intentionally are aware of these things, but, you know, it doesn't matter because it is what it is. And if you just want to like keep being a part of that, then that's on you. That's an individual decision. However, never expect Apple or Google or Samsung to make products that are actually going to be more beneficial for the end consumer's well-being. They're not thinking about that. And if they act like they are because they have some new like heart rate monitor, a new wearable, or something that's detecting like a fall or a heart attack while you're driving, that's just because they want another gadget on your body, because that's another $200 you have to spend and another unaddressed market they can conquer to keep proliferating that year-on-year growth in order to keep up with the growth of the money supply.
Boom.
Also data farming, huh? Another way to data farm you.
Yeah, right. Like Google, Amazon, Facebook, it's all data collection, and that's how they're selling more products. They're using that information to sell you more, because you're never going to be truly fulfilled until you buy a house worth of junk, and then you'll really be happy. Whereas if you actually just went outside, did a little, jog and met some friends, had a nice dinner, cooked some food together, you'd actually see true fulfillment in yourself, and then you wouldn't have the urge to buy useless shit on Amazon as much.
You mentioned the proximity that you have to your devices and how that EMF affects your health, how specifically does it affect your health? Does it affect your mitochondria, and then also when it comes to like headphones and so forth, like Bluetooth headphones in your ear versus having the wire, is there a significant difference there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I could probably talk about how it affects your health for 5 hours, but really it's a couple factors, and just to keep it at a high level for people who aren't like mitochondriacs or really like biology nerds is, yes, it does affect your mitochondria. It affects, and that's all aspects of your body that exists. Think of it as the most energy intensive areas of your body have the most mitochondria: your heart, your brain, your liver, your reproductive organs. And it just so happens those are the most sensitive areas to non-native electromagnetic fields from technology. That's no surprise. And that's showcasing the importance of electromagnetism. And that's what our mitochondria are inherently doing at a high level. They're our, energy source, of our body, in a way that people may not understand in standard biology, but it has to do with the mitochondria, has to do with the water in our body. And the water, we're 70% water, and EMFs have a very detrimental effect on the water in our biology, because water can act as a antenna, basically. And it's there's a whole depth of studies you can go and read, but it's causing oxidative stress, which is causing inflammation in our body, and then it's also disrupting our sleep. So our sleep is tremendously important, because that's when we're repairing from the day's damage. That's when we're going through cellular cleanup. That's when we're going through lymphatic drainage. Our body's basically going through this 6 to 9 hour time period where we can recover from this toxic onslaught. Now we live in an artificially blue lit world. We have the Wi-Fi on all nights. We have our cell phone 2 feet away from our head on when sleeping. We're not actually repairing at night as well. So then you're losing that battle faster, because you can think of the day and night as kind of just like this war ongoing. And every night your soldiers are going back. They're getting, going to the first aid tent. And for a long time in history, that's why you've seen, well, my grandfather lived to 100 and smoked cigarettes every day or drank whiskey every day. Well, yeah, he probably woke up at sunrise. He worked outside on the farm. There wasn't all of these pervasive technologies having these artificial inputs affecting our body's ability to repair and restore overnight. So now we're losing that battle faster, and that's why you're seeing these issues younger and younger. And that's, to me, only going to continue because we don't have, this understanding that this is actually one of the biggest toxins in our environment. So you asked about the headphones thing as well. And just to say, that's why, making healthier, more sovereign technology with the daylight computer, to me, is so imperative, because people think we might have to go back to the caves or go back to the early 1900s with technology. We don't have to do that. We could actually just engineer solutions that are more in line with nature and our biology and bring us back outside. And just to answer your question on the headphones, again, distance extremely important when it comes to electromagnetism and these EMFs coming from technology. So I personally do not wear any Bluetooth headphones, although Bluetooth is very low power in relation to your cell phone, for example. You know, holding your cell phone next to your head for a couple minutes is worse than wearing AirPods for probably like 100 hours. But it all adds up. So whatever breaks the camel's back, you know, who knows? But I would be wary of anything that is being, you know, zero distance, especially from my brain. You know, you want to think about the most sensitive organs that I just mentioned, your brain, your reproductive organs, your heart. That's where I would really be thinking about where you're putting devices. And you do have alternatives. Wired headphones are a way better option. However, if you had to choose between Bluetooth headphones and, like I said, taking a call with your phone next to your head, I would choose the latter. I would choose Bluetooth. So it's all trade-offs. Being neurotic about all these things is not going to be helpful either, because you can cause, you know, a stress response in your body from that. But just being aware, understanding the trade-offs, and then start to progress, start to slowly implement these changes in your life. And again, I'm not asking you to spend money on a product. Just think about things. You know, it costs no money to hold your cell phone further away from your body, or get it away from your body when you're sleeping on airplane mode, even out of the bedroom. Turning your Wi-Fi off at nighttime costs $0. Going outside costs $0. So again, all of the modalities, the quote-unquote health hacks that I preach, pretty much none of them cost a significant amount of money or money at all. And that's real sovereignty from a health perspective, I think. But in a modern world, it can be challenging to implement.
Yeah, so that's a question I got for you, right? Someone listening to you right now, and they're hearing all this stuff, and they want to make these changes, but they've been acclimated to a life where, you know, technology is all around them, and they've developed these habits. How do you have any advice for someone starting off, like what to focus on right away? Or
like, I want my parents to listen to this. How do we make this relevant and easy to start?
You know, I just tell people every time is like, the number one thing I realize is that the more time I spend outside, the better I feel. So start there. Watching the sunrise, getting up, getting outside is the best way to prime your body to have a better day. You'll have better sleep by doing that, by watching the sunrise. Even if it's for a couple minutes, getting outside in the beginning of the day is a perfect way to become, you know, more sovereign around your health. And then, you know, if you have to go work a 9 to 5 in a fluorescent lit office building, it is what it is. But can you think about moments, hey, I could take this phone call walking outside. I could take my lunch outside. I could just go for a workout quickly, and instead of going into this dungeon-like gym, maybe I'll go for a jog outside with some fresh air and sunlight. Starting to rewire your thinking about, how can I just be outside more often? And then number one on the other thing is back to the sleep. Create a sleep sanctuary for yourself, right? Like, minimize electronics, minimize anything that's going to distract you in the bedroom. The bedroom, for, you know, really should just be for sleeping and love making, and that's it. You shouldn't be working in there. You shouldn't be like having stressful moments or doing a bunch of activities in there. Like, create it as a sanctuary. So get all the electronics out of there, you know, put them in the next room. You can buy an alarm clock that's like analog, or you can even put your phone right outside your door, or just put it on airplane mode, whatever works for you. But just start to think about, how can I create an environment that fosters the best night of sleep possible, so that I can attack this modern toxic world better. And then you don't have to be as neurotic about avoiding every plastic water bottle, avoiding every, you know, paper BPA receipt, avoiding, you know, polyester. It's a fucking challenge. And to me, even, and worrying about, you know, that one restaurant that probably cooked your food in seed oils. However, if you have this pretty solid foundation, you can be more resilient, and that's what it's all about. So, you know, turning the lights down, getting some red light bulbs. These are more advanced steps. Getting blue light blocking glasses. These are tremendously helpful if you're willing to go that route, because again, we're just trying to copy nature, and after the sun goes down, there would be no light. We would just have maybe fire and some candles. that might be very inconvenient for a lot of people. So just thinking about, hey, could I like dim these lights or maybe get some incandescents, have less lights on at the end of the day as I'm winding down, and maybe read a book instead, or play a game with my children instead of watching TV that's blasting you with blue light and affecting that. Think about it, try it out, see how you feel, and then try and just build foundational habits that don't seem like such a chore. Because why do diets never work? Why do all these crazy, implementations never work for people? Because they don't stick to it, right? So do what works for you and understand what moves the needle, but try it out. Don't trust me, verify. And I guarantee you'll be more willing to listen and implement these things when you start to see the compounding interest on your health gains.
Awesome. I think one last question. It has to do with the future of health, with the future of modern healthcare system, as well as this movement or awakening to more of a holistic, natural approach to health. And how do you see the future shaping up?
And how can we tie that into Dr. Jack Cruz in El Salvador?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we need to just start thinking about all of the aspects of our environment and how are they affecting our health and how are they, coinciding with nature. So he mentioned Dr. Jack Cruz and El Salvador. They're working on these health freedom laws so that there are no, mandates that practitioners can come here and not be barred by having alternative viewpoints, because science has been captured, right? So much of our healthcare, our health system is based on science and studies and randomized controlled trials, most of which have been paid for by the pharmaceutical industry or the National Institute for Health, which has very strict criteria on what gets approved from a grant perspective. So the narrative around health has been controlled for a very long time. Because of our fiat money, everyone's looking for an ROI on their investment into research. So even the research needs to have a positive return on its investment. Whereas if you're researching things like water or things like sunlight, showing that these things are healthier for us, who's making money off that? Nobody. Big water, big sun, yet doesn't exist. But you can make money on the contrary, right? On, sunscreen or prevention of that, or, chemicals that need to be added to certain water supplies. So that's really where we need to have decentralization. And then we can start to change as well the healthcare system by understanding what does work when we have a chronic disease, or what works best, even when we address these foundational lifestyle habits. But I think the future of healthcare should be centered around nature and lifestyle habits. Right now, it's a prescription-first approach. Why? Because that's cookie cutter. That is easy. And what does your general practitioner give you if you go to the doctor's office? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? I don't know. I don't really go anymore. I don't even have regular health insurance. I use Crowd Health, which you guys would love them as well. Shout out to Andy Schoonover on decentralized health insurance alternatives, because we should be incentivizing people who are healthy. I'm 28. I don't need to go to the doctor all the time. I mean, yeah, it's cool to get blood work and sometimes like to showcase blood work that, for crazy stuff I'm doing. But the end all be all is how you feel. A number on a piece of paper, a biometric tracker that tells you a sleep score. That's not health. Health is your vitality, your energy, your emotion, your ability to love your community. That's really what health is. And we need a system that's fostering that, and that is providing nuanced and customized healthcare based on the individual. Because guess what? All three of us live in different places. El Salvador here, tremendously different from where I live in Wyoming. So why would the same diet, why would the same intervention happen here for someone of a different ethnicity, potentially a completely different lifestyle, as like where I live in Wyoming? It doesn't make sense. But our current system, they don't have the incentives, they don't have the time, because they're so worried about getting to that next patient to make more money, to really dive into the nuance of it. And then there's no science to back any of these things up because they've cut the funding for the last 20 to 30 years on alternative medicine and alternative scientific approaches.
Wow. Tristan, thank you, bro. That was awesome.